This is a recent cleat. This is what I wear. Just to give people a sense of width, this is like a Puma.
In terms of what the toes look like, it's just shocking.
Those things just kind of coalesced in my mind, and I came up with the idea for Prevolv to make custom fit 3D printed cleats. It's crazy, just like the soccer teams I play on, the guys after games, it's just pain. It doesn't have to be like that, but they're so acclimated to it. It's so normal for that.
Yeah, it's normal to wear terrible shoes, so it's normal to have foot pain, but it's not natural.
It starts at a young age. Like, you just shove yourself into these super stiff, narrow cleats, and people get used to it.
People that have foot pain love to think that they just have genetics or they have something they can't change.
We have professional athletes like that. I think just a really big name needs to like break this open and just really open a lot of people's minds. Because I think when it comes from someone at that highest level, it just has like more weight.
Welcome to the Restore to Explore podcast with your soulmates from the Foot Collective. I'm Jim Dooner.
And I'm Mac Lyon, and we're on a mission to empower humans to restore their natural health and function from the ground up,
So we can all explore movement and life with more freedom and confidence.
Before we jump into this week's episode, I wanted to share a little bit about my own barefoot journey. I remember the moment I slipped on my first pair of natural footwear. After years of wearing stiff, narrow, cushioned shoes that kept my feet squished and locked in place, it felt like a light bulb had gone off. It was the first time wearing shoes that I could truly feel the ground beneath me. My feet finally felt free. Those shoes were Vivo Barefoots. Up to that point, I'd never really considered my foot health. I never questioned the shoes I wore, but when I experienced that freeing sensation in Vivos, everything changed. It was one of the reasons I joined the Foot Collective. I began to pay more attention to my feet, realizing how much better they could feel in shoes if I simply allowed them to move the way nature intended. When it comes to feet, one of the most powerful changes you can make for their health is to switch to natural footwear. That's why we look for 5 key footwear qualities at TFC. We call the 5 Fs. Foot-shaped, widest at the tips of the toes, fixed so they can't flip or flop around, flat, a zero drop from heel to toe, flexible to allow your feet to move naturally, and feel to give you the sensation from the ground beneath you. Vivo Barefoot tick all the boxes. And that's why I'm so proud we're partnering with Vivo Barefoot for the Restore to Explore podcast, the world leaders in natural footwear. Their mission is deeply aligned with ours at TFC, focusing on human health and, just as importantly, the health of the planet. Together, we're not just promoting better movement, but better practices for our world. So if you're ready to experience the freedom for your feet that I did, check out Vivo Barefoot. It's not just about shoes, it's about stepping into a new way of living and a new way of caring for your body and the planet. We're so proud to be on this journey together, and we have a special offer just for our listeners. If you head to vivobarefoot.com and use the code TheFootCollective, you'll save 20%.
All right, hello TFC community. Welcome to another episode of the Restore to Explore podcast. My name is Nick, and I have the honor of hosting today's conversation with Oliver Brossmann, who is the founder of Prevolv Footwear. So Oliver, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Nick. I'm excited to talk.
Likewise, my pleasure. So I think a good place to start, just to give the Foot Collective community a primer on Prevolv, is to just, give some context. So why don't you start with, why you decided to start the project and when you started it, how the journey has been from when you started it until now, and maybe at its current iteration, what do you currently offer? What problem do you solve? You can take as long to answer that as you want, but I think our big thing at TFC is the power of story. I just want you to tell the story of you and Prevolv, and I'm curious to hear it from the founder himself, and I'm sure our community is curious, so go for it.
Cool, yeah. So I'm a soccer player, grew up playing soccer, loved soccer, and I was pretty passionate as a young kid, and as a teenager really started to train more seriously and wanted to be a professional player. That was kind of my goal. So when I was 16 though, I started to have this knee pain. I had tendonitis, patellar tendonitis, and I basically, I went to physical therapy. I did all the normal things, but it just kept getting worse, and I didn't really know what was causing it. But eventually I actually had surgeries on both knees, and that put me out for like a year. Came back, and it was just around the time when I was coming back into it, I read the book Born to Run, and that really changed my life, changed my path. Because as soon as I took off my shoes and just would run around barefoot, I just wouldn't have the same knee ping. So that was a real big clue. And I also was, I don't know, just a curious person. And I read about 3D printing in some magazine and how that was like potentially the new way things would be made. And so, I don't know, those things just kind of coalesced in my mind. And I came up with the idea for Prevolv pretty early, like when I was like 17 or 18, to make custom fit 3D printed cleats. That was, these ideas just kind of all merged. I had no idea the challenges that would come, but so that's how it started. And I think I got my first 3D printer probably in like 2010. It was like a Ultimaker made out of like wood. So that was good just to like kind of see the technology up front. And immediately I thought, okay, like I think there's something here. Like you can make any design. The design part is like, you know, there's a flexibility there. So the customization was really there early, but the materials and the hardware weren't quite there yet. So I actually had a first stint on Prevolv from 2014 to 2017. So it was like right after college for me. And we were making more like running shoes, kind of like croc type deal, basically just like a one-off one material print running shoe. We were working on cleats, but they were just not quite comfortable enough. Like weren't ready for the market, and arguably this shoe wasn't really ready either. There was still a lot of problems with it.
But probably a required step. Like I'm sure you learned a lot from that, and you know, I think it's easier for people to see a polished, market-ready product. What no one sees is like the 60 prototypes and failure, quote unquote failures that led to that. And
yes.
I think it's important for people to realize that that is what actually leads to the good version, is many versions that weren't good.
For sure. Yeah. And you know, there was and there is still an algorithm that was creating this design off of a foot scan. And so, you know, the foundation was being laid for the technology that I'm using today, which is taking someone's foot scan and basically running it through an algorithm, getting a bunch of 3D models from it, and then printing those. So it was an important, part of the process. Like you said, there was a lot of learning. We sold like 30 pairs of these for, I think at the time it was like $200 or $300. But yeah, that I kind of got burnt out that first time around, and took a break, traveled, worked, made some more money, and then went at it again. And
what made you want? Did you always know you were going to come back to it?
No,
Okay.
I was like, I wasn't sure. Okay. But I guess it was just, I don't know. It's like fate or something. I don't know. It just feels like this is part of my mission in life to do this. So it didn't, at a certain point, it felt like it wasn't really a choice. Like I just had to. There's like this, the kid in me, the 18-year-old who couldn't really do his sport, that kid like is pestering me and won't go away until I feel like I've really solved this. I mean, and I think that it's gotten to that point. It is actually really doing the thing that it's meant to do. So, I mean, I could get into the current iteration of what we're doing.
Before we do that, tell us some stories of the hard shit that no one talks about, no one sees, like the challenges, or do you have any stories of moments of frustration or moments of joy where like something went really right that you weren't expecting, or you discovered something new, or moments where you're just like contemplating quitting or nothing's working? Like anything come to mind? I think that's the sauce that people really, that's what I love to hear. Maybe it's just me, but
that's an interesting one. I mean, so for a long time, I was trying to 3D print the cleats in one shot, and I found some printers that could do two materials at once. And so you could kind of create the stiffer material for the bottoms and have a more flexible upper. And I remember like the first pair where like just getting it to work to like have a thing that was cohesive was difficult. And I got a pair that I could actually like put on. I remember I went to a soccer field and I just like sprinted in a straight line and it just felt amazing. It's like, oh man, like this is it. And I probably ran like 2 sprints and then I looked down at the cleats, something felt a little weird. And I'm like, oh, and it's just like falling apart. So it was like, you know, it was
momentary joy.
Yeah, momentary. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like, I mean, there's those moments when it fails and you're just like kind of devastated. But I feel like it's also like a muscle. Like over time, you kind of get used to the fact that like nothing is easy and it's going to take multiple iterations. But yeah, I think that one in particular, I remember like it was really hard just to get to the thing to even test. And then it felt so good. And then it was like, sorry, dude, it's going to take a lot longer.
Keep going.
Yeah.
And so that was the sort of one shot print, 2 material phase. And then at which point did you shift into a different way of thinking? And what was that? What is the different way? I'm assuming doing it in layers and components.
Yeah. So the kind of second time around with Prevolv, I met an engineer and we worked together for like a year. And yeah, his big contribution, he had a few, but he was like, you know, we need to separate the parts into flat parts that are a lot easier to print, that are going to be a lot stronger, and then assemble them. But I mean, assembly is its own beast too. So, but yeah, so it's kind of morphed into a more hybrid like shoe manufacturing, and the fact that we 3D print everything custom, but then when we assemble it kind of like you would assemble a normal shoe. So, you know, that all starts with a last. So you need a shape, and there's a bunch hanging up behind me, but you need the shape to actually create the internal volume of the shoe. And then, you know, we 3D print the upper in multiple multiple materials. So there's like a soft foam material as the liner.
So for people listening, not seeing the video, because that'll be most people, the last is like a solid, basically outline, solid chunk that looks like a foot. And then the material that he was holding up is basically a flat, flexible sheet, which, yeah, I mean, and are you, when you're doing this, you know, when you're talking to your engineer, are you thinking of manufacturing in the sense of scale and efficiency, or are you literally just saying we need to make a minimum viable product? You know, the manufacturing efficiency is not really a consideration right now. That's a later problem. Is that sort of the thinking?
I mean, it's definitely in the conversation. I mean, you know, we're offering a product right now, and so the lower our costs, and labor is the biggest cost, the better. So, you know, that'll let us offer a cheaper product in the future. Right now, our prices range from like $450 to $650, and it really is because it's all made in the U.S. by hand, kind of, right? It's hybrid. But yeah, that labor is by far the biggest cost. So everything I'm doing in terms of the assembly process is like, how do you make it faster and better quality? Yeah. So that's currently we just iterate. And what's beautiful about 3D printing is you can tweak things pretty easily. There's not the same with traditional shoe manufacturing. They have these giant molds that, you know, are quite expensive, and once you get it set, you can't really change the design. For us, like, we can tweak, we can experiment. So I feel that the progress, I mean, it's been, we started at 0 and we've been like steadily going up. And at some point I would hope, you know, we can overtake the traditional. I mean, I think there'll always be a little bit of a higher price tag because of the added work that goes into a custom pair of shoes. But I think over time it will, you know, approach more of like those higher end athletic shoes on the market. I mean, that's kind of our goal.
And even, I mean, you go into a sports, what's the most expensive off the shelf cleat you can buy right now? Like, what's the most expensive Nike cleat?
Probably for Nike, probably like $320, I want to say, okay. Maybe $350. Yeah.
And that is a shoe that's literally going to deform your feet. is not going to actually
there's
fit
that.
well.
There's
It is going to hinder performance. It might be made with some fancy materials and be light, but does that really matter if your foot function and your athleticism is compromised? I would say no. It also is not, it's just made with a cookie cutter mold, right? It's not made for your foot. So, I used to work in a hockey store, and you'd have all these skates that are like, varying price levels, different materials. The higher end ones would be $700. And then you'd have companies that make $1,500 skates for pros, because pros actually want something that respects their feet, something that's built for their foot.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the question I have with Prevolv is, are you, and maybe it's not a choice you even have to make, but are you trying to make cleats for the average everyday person, or are you really committing into basically serving pros and serving people who really want to spend, seven, or like you said, you're starting about $500, $500 to $1,000. Are those the people you want to serve? Do you want to, compete to get the price lower and have a broader audience, or do you just want to make the highest performance, most custom fit, highest quality cleats possible?
Well, I think I kind of want to do both if possible. I would say that probably the second thing you said is for now, it makes more sense just because we are small. We do have limited amount of capacity. And so really focusing on the best product we can make with the most service and the most customizability is kind of where we have to start. Now, I would, talking about that younger me, I don't know if he could have afforded $1,000 for a pair of cleats. So, I mean, I do want it accessible to your average athlete, but I would also say I think it's important to remember that people's feet are very different from one person to the next. And so a lot of our early customers are people who have exceptionally wide feet. And for them, it's even worse putting themselves into the really narrow, traditional cleats on the market. It really messes them up because the angle of your big toe gets, the more it's off of that narrow last, it's getting pushed in even more. So I actually didn't know when I was young that I have almost a size E width. I have a pretty wide forefoot. And so I think that was part of the reason why I had the knee problems. And that's part of the reason why you see people who are wearing traditional cleats and doing fine. And I think part of that is because they probably have average to narrow, width to their feet. Now, there are other things in the cleats that I think aren't good for them, like just how stiff they are. I think that's another aspect that you're losing out on everything that your foot can do. I think, the foot is just this amazing structure that you can really benefit your athleticism if you're engaging your foot in all its different capacities. So
it really is a scam, eh? How they sold us these performance features that actually decrease performance and inhibit the true capacity of our foot, which is incredible. And, if when you're young, affordability is interesting because, would you rather pay $200 for a pair of cleats, or $100 even, and then pay a couple $1,000s in rehab and not be able to play your sport? Or would you rather pay $500 for a pair of cleats and not have to go through all the bullshit? Obviously it's not that simple. The fact that kids sit all day in school is I used to treat tons of kids with Achilles and patellar issues.
Yeah.
And most of them, it's literally, if they weren't sitting all day and if they weren't wearing shoes that compromise their feet, I really don't think they would have any of those issues. Kids aren't designed to break down. It's almost, early on I had this mindset shift where it's no issues I see are flaws with the body. They're all flaws with how the body's being used. And when you look at it that way, you're like, well, shit, why aren't people being helped to, eliminate all these unnatural things they're exposing their bodies to? And the sad reality is the disease care professionals aren't actually trained to understand that. And so from a shoe manufacturer's perspective, you might actually have a more significant impact on the lower body health and performance of an athlete than any physio ever could, because you're effectively creating the thing that's covering and impacting their foot all the time. They're wearing the shoe or the cleat, whereas their physio visit is an hour a week. It's really not that significant.
Yeah.
So
I
I think what you're doing is more significant than you realize.
Yeah, when you frame it that way, yeah, I mean, it does seem like cost benefit analysis. It's an investment worth your time. I mean, yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, shoes might be expensive, but foot health is what, foot dysfunction and lifelong pain is way more expensive. It's more just most people don't know they have a problem until it's a really big problem, right? Like the people that are wearing unnatural cleats that seem to be doing well, it's like, okay, let's have the conversation again in 5 years. Or even on the flip side, what would they be doing performance wise if they didn't compromise their feet?
Yeah, I love to think of that theoretical with LeBron. I mean, I think at this point, a lot of people have seen those pictures of his feet. Yeah. I'm like, dude, if that guy had healthy feet, imagine, like he's already like maybe the best ever. Just physically, probably that's unquestionable almost. But yeah, he's like leaving like more athleticism on the table. Like his feet aren't doing anything. So
yeah, he's like literally competing with a handicap. He's still crushing it.
Yeah,
but
crazy.
What if he didn't have the handicap?
Yeah,
and I think the longevity piece, without getting too far on this tangent, I think the longevity piece is where you'll end up seeing it with LeBron. It's like he just will probably have 5 years cut off that he could have otherwise played at a high level,
right?
Because when things start giving way, especially the foundation of the body, it ends up carrying a much higher repair and maintenance cost, and eventually the math doesn't work out, right? You have to take care of yourself to play forever. You can't play forever, but to play for a long time at a high level, requires 30 years of diligence doing the right things, not just doing a lot of things, not just getting like therapy every day and all, like doing the right things. Like don't wear shoes that destroy your feet. That's really important. So anyway, getting back to your cleat. So you showed the flat template. When did you start to go to individual components? How has that gone? And then where are you today with what you're offering at Prevolv?
Yeah, so I mean, it took a while from going to the breaking up the shoe into different parts to actually having a final product. And I mean, there was like one of the difficulties is just glue, like how you glue things together and just like how everything fits. And so now it's show you like one of our recent pairs. This is a recent cleat. This is what I wear. It's just to give people a sense of width. This is like a Puma.
Oh my God.
Which
so crazy.
Is actually
flip them over, put it on the opposite side.
Yeah, they're actually like a size 10. I'm like more like a size
so
8.5 or 9.
So crazy.
So it's narrower than my shoe, but it's longer. Yeah, so it is wild.
For those listening, Oliver was just holding up a traditional cleat and then one of his Prevolv cleats, and the shape difference in terms of what the toes look like is just shocking. One of them just looks like a little pointed submarine, and the other one actually looks like a foot with an anatomical shape. It's shocking.
It is shocking what they're doing. And then we also have more flexibility in our cleat plate. So it's something that the arch is just like not built like most cleats have, like reinforcement here to not have the arch be able to bend at all. So with us, we actually accentuate the flexibility in the arch to allow the foot to absorb impact. And then like the entire cleat plate is a little bit more flexible. But that's something that we sort of fine tune to each person, because based on like how heavy you are, your experience with barefoot training, will adjust slightly the stiffness and the thickness of our insole. So I think that's like maybe something we could cover today is just, if you haven't been barefoot running or training your feet, it's just like any other muscle, and you have to take it slow. You have to build up that strength. And I think like that's maybe why some people have a like negative conception of the barefoot industry, because there was that lawsuit back with Vibram back in the day where they were like sued.
It was such bullshit.
It was
to break it down because it's so nonsensical.
It is
sticky.
Yeah, if you go into the details, it is bullshit. But like people just remember seeing the headline.
Yeah.
But I do think like a lot of like that all came because people would just train too hard too fast. And I think an important note there is that your feet, there's just tons of nerves But if you haven't been using them, it's almost like they're numb. It's like you don't really have feeling. So I feel like it's very easy to overdo it. Like you can go a day, train really hard with your feet and not like feel the pain. And then it's like the next day, you're like, oh my God, what did I do? And so I think for our product, like we really try and tell people like, take it slow, build up. And we also have a couple other tools. We include met pads if as an option that are interchangeable in our insole. So those help with just activating the transverse arch that goes across the metatarsals, underneath the metatarsals. A lot of people, that's just like completely turned off and atrophied. And so the met pads is a system that you can kind of build up the activation in your arch. It's not arch support, which a lot of people kind of think, oh, I need support for my arch. It's like arch activation. And then the other thing that we offer are toe spacers. So I'm wearing these ones right now. And they are an adjustable set of toe spacers. We include 3 different sizes so people can kind of get the best setup for them.
Cool. I love the customizability. Like even within the same shoe, you can customize. You can essentially experiment, right, with the spacer width and with the met pad to see what works best. And even over time, as your foot changes, be able to modify that and just always be your own best scientist and do your own experiments. And because you have the most feedback, right? Every training session is a feedback session. And once people dial in the ability to like really get the right combo for the right time based on where they're at, I think it's just allowing people to enhance their own performance by renaturalizing the function of the foot, not by like external support or external stuff. It's literally just accelerating the process of offsetting the unnatural effects that have come from just weird ass shoes that almost everyone is still wearing, especially cleats. I played rugby, I played back, so I wore soccer cleats. And I kept my soccer cleats because I was like, I need a souvenir of what I used to jam my foot into. And I used to finish training or finish games and my feet would just be obliterated. And I was just like, well, this is just the way it is. This is just how it is. This is the cost of playing rugby. And when I look back, I'm like, no, that was the cost of wearing shoes that like had no business being on my feet. I have pretty wide, meaty feet. And I just remember when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, how did I never look at that? And that was kind of part of the priming that made me just think about the Foot Collective and realize like, this is just, we have to reimagine what it means to help people with their feet, because it does not have anything to do with treating the problems of shoes and never talking about shoes. It's like, the old idea of, okay, you have a fish that's sick because they're in terrible water, dirty, toxic water. Do you keep treating the fish and keep the water, or do you just put clean water? And it turns out like, just like fish get better when you give them clean water, feet get better when you stop damaging them with shoes. And so I really commend and respect people like yourself that are sort of pioneering that new path of, we don't need to treat the problems. We need to relieve the shoeitis. We need to change the shoes. And if no one else is doing it, I think the cool thing about 3D printing is it like literally decentralizes shoe design and manufacturing, where we don't have to wait for the big companies to do shit anymore. Because there might be 100 individuals that are curious tinkerers around the world that are designing way better products than Nike probably will ever design. No one knows about them yet. But as people experience more and more foot pain, more and more people are going to be turning to the internet to find people like yourself. And I think the idea of speed of innovation in Nike, where there's a giant team, a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of MBAs to get approval from doing something new, and a career risk fear of doing anything new, versus yourself, where it's like in a week you could go through 10 iterations.
Yeah.
Like those who learn the fastest will create the best product. And with 3D printing and operations like yourself, where like one guy in his own little studio can literally accelerate the pace of innovation beyond anything that any multi-billion company could do, because you can just do it faster. I think that's so cool.
Yeah. Dude, I'm going to clip that and put it on our site. That's amazing. Yeah, no, I agree with everything you're saying. And it's crazy. Just like the soccer teams I play on, the guys after games, it's just normal. They're just like, my feet just like, it's just pain. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be like that, but they're so acclimated to it. It's so normal for them. I mean, I think it starts at a young age. Like, you just shove yourself into these super stiff, narrow cleats, and people get used to it. So.
Yeah, it's normal to wear terrible shoes, so it's normal to have foot pain, but it's not natural. And one of my favorite memes now is foot pain is optional. Let's debate it, because people that have foot pain love to think that they just have genetics or they have something they can't change. Like, it's so, there's a lot of, I have compassion for these people, but I just don't tolerate people, making up a victim story where they can't do anything about it. And the whole notion that like foot pain is optional always I haven't been proven wrong, and I refuse to say anything different.
So what do you think of like the current state of the industry? I feel like there's some interesting trends in that. I mean, there's Hoka, which is like going in the opposite direction and is super popular. I don't quite understand. But there are a lot more minimalist brands out there than there were like 5 years ago. So like, what do you think, as someone who's really, touching all these different points, talking to lots of different people, like, where is it going right now? Where are we at?
I mean, we have this trend with clothing, the athleisure wave, right? Which was a while ago. And people realized that, well, I can actually wear comfortable clothing to a cafe and to the office. I don't have to wear this like restrictive, weird ass costume that people expect me to wear. And it kicked off this era where like Lululemon or like all these brands that make athletic looking, comfortable clothing just took massive market share away from all the fashion companies that just made clothes that weren't conducive to human function. Right. I think shoes have been sort of delayed in that wave, but I kind of feel like, to me, it feels like we're at like year one right now of the athleisure transition in footwear, just based on, I'm part of the Soul Freedom team here in Canada, where we have North America's largest natural footwear collection, and we try and create an experience where it's more about learning about your feet, but we try and provide the most options at the most price points for shoes that kind of align with our natural footwear principles. And every week I meet with the team. I go hang out in the store sometimes. Every time I'm in there, I'm shocked at how much curiosity there is. People coming in off the street that don't know anything about it but are willing to listen, and how much good feedback we're getting, and how much business, how many people are coming in and buying these shoes. Like the growth is actually stunning. And so I think it's picking up. And it's one of these things where when you start wearing shoes that don't mess your feet up, you don't go back to wearing shoes that mess your feet up, at least not more than like 10% of the time for special occasions. So it's kind of a one-way street. The adoption curve is based on education. People are finding out more and more that shoes are a determinant of their foot health. And at the Foot Collective, we're sort of creating a community of professionals who are ready to leave disease care behind and ready to enter the world of healthcare, which is helping people take better care of their bodies. And that starts with wearing shoes that don't compromise your feet. And so I think what I'm seeing is like the average consumer is getting better informed, which means they're transitioning to natural footwear. Professionals are becoming better informed, which allows them to have this huge impact on everyone they treat by helping them understand footwear. So, and then different companies and projects are popping up everywhere all the time, all over the world. And so the choice that people have when they want to buy a pair of natural shoes, the choice in style and price point and use case in terms of sport specific or just casual or athletic, whatever, is just ballooning. And I don't see it stopping. And so, it feels like we're at year one of like a decade-long big shift. And if over the next decade, we go from, a fraction of 1% of people knowing about and wearing natural shoes to like 5 or 10% of people, that's probably as much, if not more, than all of us combined on Team Foot Health can handle, right? It takes time for change to happen, especially with deep-seated things like fashion and clothing, where we've done the same thing forever. There's an old saying that says change happens one funeral at a time. And so the new generation learns better, they do better, they educate their families, they educate their lineage. So it's accelerating, and it's happening way quicker than I've seen. I started TFC in 2015, and like this year and last year have really been a tipping point where it's like way more athletes are reaching out, way more people are tuning in, way more pros are cluing in. Like it seems like it's accelerating. So I think people are primed. The Overton window is open for people to change their mind about shoes. And the fact that shoes don't look like clown shoes that also respect your feet is helping a lot, because it eases the transition to go to something that's not super weird when there's nicer options available. So that was a long-winded answer, but I think it's happening, and it's happening really quick now, and I don't see it slowing down.
Yeah, I totally agree with all that. Did you see that Nike, I think they released like a healthier like baby shoe? Maybe it was like...
I did, yeah. Andy Bryant. Shout out to Andy.
Yeah. I love that guy
posted
too.
something about it. And it's just ironic that, like, I've always found it very interesting to go through the mental models of, like, could Nike ever do a natural shoe, a real OG pure natural shoe? And I always revert back to the fact that they can't, because the marketing they would need to do for that shoe, which would be based on truthful education, would implicitly cannibalize all of their other shoes. Would, by saying this shoe is good for your foot and not saying about all the others, is implicitly saying all our other shoes mess your feet up. And they're not going to do that because they care about dollars. They don't care about foot function.
Right.
And so I think it's going to be like a Kodak moment for a lot of these big guys, where Adidas, Reebok, Nike, if none of them actually commit to making natural footwear, they will get Kodaked. They will get blockbustered, and they won't even see it coming, despite them knowing full well that this is the reality. Unless you get some executive that is really ready and willing to be part of the future. I think it's going to be very hard for them to do it unless they create the way I can see them doing it is creating a sub-brand, like a natural shoe sub-brand by Nike. And be very careful with their marketing. But I think if I think this is a grassroots thing where the individual is the one that makes the decision, and the pros are the ones that influence individuals. And when people, the free market is the louder speaker and the most effective feedback. If no one's buying your shit shoes anymore, you're going to have to make something different. And it's going to take a long time to put in place the manufacturing infrastructure and design to actually do that. And all the people, all the little brands that are doing it right now have a massive head start, have massive brand integrity with the people they serve. And I think we should decentralize footwear. I don't think we need giant companies making the bulk of the shoes anymore. I think instead of one company making 1 million shoes, I think we should have 10,000 companies making 1,000 shoes. And it seems like that's where it's going. So.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that their stranglehold on culture is pretty strong in the sports world, though. I mean, just the way it's been set up, where they're sponsoring athletes to wear their shoes, and then they get money from people buying those shoes, and then it just, it's this cycle that they're kind of stuck in. So I do think it's going to be difficult. I think what you said about Kodak and that happening to them is possible. But I mean, I think, are they like Nike has like the most recognized logo and like brand in the world, I think. So we love sports. Like it's a global thing. And so it's going to be interesting.
If you're listeing to this, get your shit together, bro.
Yeah.
Like, be part of the future.
Yeah.
I mean,
they
Phil
know.
Knight would be rolling around in his office being like, this is terrible. It's not Nike. Nike has unfortunately turned into just this behemoth, this money-making corporate behemoth, where the spirit, the innovation spirit of Phil Knight no longer has primary place at Nike. At least it doesn't seem like it. But what I would say is, yes, they do have a stranglehold on culture. Yes, the amount of money is just mind-boggling that Nike and the big brands have to play around. But all it takes is one flagship athlete to say, I don't care what you're willing to pay me to wear this. I refuse to compromise my body to make more money. Like, I really think there's going to be a new, and we're kind of working on this at TFC and with Vivo, is like the new athlete sponsorship is help them take care of their bodies to perform well. And included in that is making wise choices of the clothing you cover your body with so that you don't compromise your function. And I think, saying, okay, you can either mess your feet up and make tons of money, or preserve your feet and athleticism and expand your career, performance, and longevity, and make way less money and not make, $1 billion. I think right now, not a lot of them care about foot longevity and function, because some of them only have a short athletic career window, and I don't blame them. But there will be a few that will just say, I know too much about these shoes. And probably what the brands will do is make a special version for them and not tell anyone, so they won't lose them.
I was about to say something.
But in the internet age, like you really can't hide for that long. Like someone's going to see their cleat and be like, why does their cleat look like a foot? And the cleats with their name on it that I buy don't look like a foot and are messing my feet up. Like something's not right here. And that athlete's integrity is on the line to a certain extent. So it'll happen. It just hasn't happened at scale yet.
I think it's a giant opportunity for an athlete at that really top level to just gain. I think they'll gain way more than they lose. Like they might lose the monetary payment of whatever brand is paying them, but I think just with the attention and like credibility they'll gain, I don't know. I think that's probably, I would think it's worth it for them. And so not
all athletes are strictly money driven. A lot of them are.
Exactly. I don't think so. Yeah. We just need one. But what you said, I think is really true, that like there are a bunch of pro athletes already who already know this, but they're like training with the good shoes. They're not, they might switch to like the Nikes for game day, or they have a pair of shoes that's unbranded. Like we have professional athletes like that who like there's rules about what brands they can wear on field for game day. So it's already like happening. And then I think, I think just a really big name needs to like break this open and just really open a lot of people's minds. Because I think when it comes from someone at that highest level, it just has like more weight. So I'm looking forward to that day. I think it's coming. We just need a brave soul to throw it out there.
It's going to happen. They'll be wearing Prevolvs, and TFC will help them get there.
Hey there everyone, Mac here, just jumping in to wrap up this episode with a quick note. Unfortunately, we ran into some technical issues right at the end of this episode, and the last 5 minutes or so of the conversation between Nick and Oliver was cut off. Since we did lose a bit of that final segment, I wanted to personally let you know where you can find Oliver and learn more about his company, Prevolv. Prevolv specializes in custom 3D printed footwear designed to optimize movement, enhance performance, and support long-term foot health. If you're interested in natural high-performance shoes tailored to your feet, then head over to prevolvfootwear.com to check out their work. Thanks again for tuning in. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might find it valuable. We'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for joining us on the Restore to Explore podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, the best way you can support us is by leaving a review and subscribing wherever you are catching this episode. If you want more free TFC training and education, are after some of our training tools, some natural footwear discounts, or want more specialized guidance from a trusted TFC health professional, then thefootcollective.com is the place to go. You'll find all of the helpful links in the show notes.